It started the morning after I ate some leftover soup that had been in my fridge for a period of time. I would rather not specify, and I woke up feeling mostly fine except for a low buzzing behind my left ear that I assumed was either dehydration or the beginning of something I would Google and immediately regret. And then I got on the bus to work, and the man sitting next to me thought very loudly that he wished he was a pigeon, and I heard it like someone had said it, directly into my ear with a working microphone and surprisingly good acoustics. And I turned to look at him, and he was just staring out the window with a completely blank face, thinking about pigeons and bread, and how nobody ever asks a pigeon for anything or expects anything from it, and the total gorgeous freedom that must come with living that way. I sat very still for a moment, the way you sit when something has happened that your brain has not finished processing. And then I moved to the seat across the aisle and stared at my hands and told myself I was simply tired. And that tired. People sometimes imagine things, and that this was one of those times, and everything was completely fine, and I should just drink some water when I got to the office. By the time I got to the office, I had heard 4 more thoughts, and none of them were things I had been prepared to receive before 9 in the morning, including a woman on the street who was mentally redecorating someone else's house, room by room without their knowledge or consent, a security guard running the complete lyrics of a 2003 pop song on a continuous loop with no sign of stopping, a man in a coffee shop who was having a genuine internal crisis about whether he was a morning person who had been making poor choices, or a night person who had been living an exhausting lie for 30 years, and my colleague Dennis, who was thinking about whether staplers had feelings and whether the act of stapling was something they experienced in any meaningful way, and who had apparently been sitting with this question for several weeks without mentioning it to anyone. The problem was not the ability itself, but the content, because it turned out that left completely alone inside their own heads, people were absolutely unhinged in ways their faces gave absolutely no indication of, and by lunch I had learned that my manager was in the middle of a heated, silent argument with a sandwich about something the sandwich had apparently done. The woman in accounting believed with quiet, unshakable certainty that her houseplants were monitoring her work performance and reporting back to each other. A man in the elevator was replaying a conversation from 4 years ago and going back to change all his answers with the focused intensity of someone who still believed the outcome could be different, and the intern was convinced that escalators were designed as a trap of some kind and was still in the early stages of working out the details of who specifically had said it and why. I tried to eat my lunch in the break room and gave up after 10 minutes because the break room contained 6 people, and 6 people turned out to be 5 too many for someone in my current condition, and I could not finish my food while simultaneously learning that the guy from IT believed that clouds were doing something deliberate but could not prove it yet, and the woman who always microwaved fish was mentally writing a strongly worded letter to someone she had not spoken to since 2019 and had no plans to ever send. I went home early, threw away the rest of the soup with the decisive energy of someone closing a chapter, and sat alone in my apartment in complete silence, and the silence was full of my own thoughts, which were also honestly quite strange, but at least they were familiar and mine, and I had made a long and separate peace with them years ago and did not need to be introduced to them like this.